We're moving on to talk about Ukraine now, and the Kremlin has reacted to reports that the UK is mulling a plan to deploy 30,000 European troops in Ukraine. Moscow said that it was, quote, a concern because it involves forces from NATO members. This after Donald Trump, of course, said yesterday that Russia has the cards in any negotiations to end the war in Ukraine. And that after he had earlier called the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky a dictator who refuses to hold elections. Zelensky is due to meet Trump's special envoy, Keith Kellogg, in Kyiv, as Trump's words continue to rattle Kyiv and European leaders as well. Well, I'm joined now by our senior international affairs editor, Rob Parsons. Hi, Rob. Here we are again.
Yeah.
What do you make about the noise surrounding Trump's latest statements? It's pretty much the question I asked you yesterday.
It is, and it's probably the question we're going to be talking about for quite a long time. Look, this is classic Donald Trump. Instead of backing off, he doubles down on his original position, coming out with even stronger words against Volodymyr Zelensky, despite all the criticism that's coming his way from the United States allies, in particular from Europe, with Chancellor Scholz, Emmanuel Macron, Keir Starmer in the UK, and many others, lining up to support Volodymyr Zelensky. And Annalena Baerbock, for instance, the German foreign minister, dismissed what Donald Trump has said as absurd. She said, if you look at the real world instead of just firing off a tweet, then you know who in Europe has to live in the conditions of a dictatorship. People in Russia, people in Belarus. But, Donald Trump still saying Ukraine started the war. Donald Trump still saying that Zelensky is a dictator with no more than 4% of popular support, that Ukraine needs to hold elections, despite the fact that, Keir Starmer, among others from Great Britain, who fought in the Second World War against Germany, no elections between 1935 and 1945 in the United Kingdom for very good reasons, that it's extremely difficult, if not folly, to hold an election during conditions of wartime. And then he accused Zelensky of playing Biden like a fiddle to squeeze $350 billion out of him. Where he gets these figures from is another question. But these are it's straight out of the Kremlin playbook. And this is what is of so much concern to Volodymyr Zelensky. It's why he is himself so rattled by what Donald Trump is saying, because he's heard all these lines before, but not coming from Washington, coming from Moscow. Hence his anxiety, and hence his clear irritation. When he comes back and says that Donald Trump is living in a disinformation bubble, which in turn prompts Donald Trump to come down even harder. The problem is that this is of huge concern now for the United States European allies in particular, because if indeed Donald Trump is going to go behind Ukraine's back and do a deal with Russia, with Moscow, then that affects Europe's security absolutely directly. Hence these meetings we've had in Paris this week, organized by President Emmanuel Macron, and the Europeans saying, we've got to increase our spending. We've got to increase our, the weaponry that we have at our disposal. We have to start, rationalizing, how we organize our defense industries and so on. People in Europe are waking up to the possible implications of what is far more than just a spat between Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky.
And this spat, as you say, it's certainly temporarily at least a breakdown totally in relations. So what is the point in Zelensky's upcoming meeting with Keith Kellogg, Trump's special envoy?
Well, there may turn out to be no point at all, but you've got to clutch even at straws sometimes. At a time when it seems, that American foreign policy is being shaped around the whims of the fragile ego of its current president, you have little choice but to clutch at whatever you can grasp hold of. Keith Kellogg, who's the U.S. special envoy to Ukraine, is known to be more sympathetic than most in the current administration to the position, to the plight of Ukraine. Probably Zelensky will get a more sympathetic ear from Kellogg than he would get from some of the others. But the question is, having been to Ukraine, having looked around and seen the reality on the ground, having spoken to Volodymyr Zelensky, Kellogg goes back to Washington and tells the boss, what he's seen. Is Donald Trump going to pay him the slightest bit of heed? That is the concern at the moment, that, there is a group of people around Donald Trump who probably understand perfectly well that they've got to do something to try and control the direction in which this is going. But don't seem to have either the courage or the ability to get the message across, to try and break through the disinformation bubble that Zelensky was talking about. We had J.D. Vance, for instance, saying, the vice president, saying that, Zelensky needs to watch how he speaks to the boss. It's just not helpful, But this is, on the one hand, it seems like some sort of absurd comedy, but the reality is that this is happening. It's real, and it's affecting the lives of people in Ukraine, and could very well affect the lives of people way beyond Ukraine. Just the last 24 hours, François Bayrou, the French Prime Minister, saying the risk of war on the continent, in other words, of Europe, has never been so high since 1945.
Absolutely. And similar things said by the Danish Prime Minister, the Swedish Prime Minister. Yeah. Thanks very much, Rob. I hope it won't be the same question again tomorrow. Thanks very much, Rob Parsons there, our Senior International Affairs Editor.